So here's the last chapter to be included in your midterm examination. So our coverage for your midterm examination is chapters 4, 5, and 6. So for chapter 4, we've talked about the operations on fractions. The chapter 5 is the decimal numbers or the introduction for decimal numbers. And the chapter 6, which will be the discussion for today, is on the operations and decimals or the operations with or regarding decimals and fractions. So, there are cases kasi where the given problem includes both a fraction and a decimal at the same time. So, if you are given that kind of scenario, what are you going to do? So here is our discussion so that if there are cases where you are going to face such circumstances in the future, then you will already be able to know how to handle it. So in this chapter, we will be discussing specifically the different ways on how to convert fraction to decimals and vice versa, the different operations regarding decimals and fractions, and how do we compare decimal numbers if they are given. Starting with our conversion of fractions. There are cases or just to remind you, I will be going to discuss or tell you the instructions regarding your activities after my discussion. So kindly finish my discussion in order for you to understand or to at least know what what are the things you are going to do after or for you to finish your activities. So let's start with the conversion of fraction to decimals. What if you are given a fraction and you are obliged or you are required to change them to decimal numbers? These are the steps that we are going to do. First is we just simply divide the numerator by its denominator. So if you are given a fraction a over b, for you to change that to a decimal number, you need to divide a by b. So after that, you can add as many zeros as you would like kasi nga based from my previous discussion, as I said noon, one of the properties of fraction or decimals rather is you can add as many zeros as you would like and that will make the fraction or the decimal the same. So for example, you have 41.3. 41.3 is a decimal number. Since based from my definition of decimals, decimal numbers are numbers that have a decimal point. Now, if you would like to add a zero after 3, that would still the same. Or I mean, the value would still be 41.3. If you would like to, again, extend that by adding more zeros, as many zeros as you would like, still, that will not change the value of our 41.3. So that is the beauty, or that is one of the properties of decimal numbers. And that is one of the properties that we should know. Now, another properties that you should also remember in this, for you to understand our situation or for you to understand our discussion for today is our property or our theorem that says that all whole numbers are decimals. So what are the whole numbers? Ang mga ating whole numbers, if you can still remember, are the numbers starting from 1 until positive infinity. So lahat ito ay whole numbers. And ang sabi ng ating theorem, lahat ng ito ay considered to be decimals. That is because if you take consideration our whole number dito na 4, kahit hindi ninyo nakikita, you should know that the decimal point of 4 is at its right part or right side. So nandito ang kanyang decimal point. And sabi na, and we can add 0. As said kanina that it is one of the properties, we can just simply add zeros after or before the number, not in between, just before or after. And it will still mean the same. So by that situation, you can now conclude that this is still 4, but this is already rewritten into decimal number. That is the reason why I am saying that lahat ng whole numbers are considered to be decimals. And that are the properties or some of the properties that you should take in consideration and remember before going on with our discussion. So going back to our conversion from fractions to decimals, if you are if you are given, for example, 3/8, and you are trying to convert that to its equivalent decimal number. Ang sabi lang natin, we just simply divide the numerator by its denominator, which is 3 divided by 8. And you can do or you can divide that by following our normal division or our long division. Now, our long division is already, it's no longer new to you because it has already been discussed on my previous discussion regarding decimals. And of course, I know that this is what you've been using since elementary when you were dividing numbers or when you were dividing counting numbers. Therefore, it's just, or I can assume that it is already innate to you on how you can divide numbers in this kind of situation. So if you divide 3 by 8, you know that that would be 0. But we also know that our 3 here is a decimal number. And you can just simply extend that by adding its decimal point. And again, pwede tayong magdagdag ng 0 since sabi natin sa properties ng decimal, you can add as many zeros as you would like. And 30 divided by 8, that would give you 4 or 3 rather because that's 24. Now 30 minus 24, that's just 6. Again, you can add zeros here kasi that is one of the properties. So if you choose to add until as many zeros as you would like, you can do that. And if you continue dividing the numbers together, you will come up with the remainder 0 and the decimal number is 0.375. That means that the equivalent decimal number of our fraction here na 38 is just equal to 0.375. So what if ang given naman natin is a mixed number? Therefore, if yung given sa atin is mixed number, you recall my definition of decimal number. Ang sabi ko sa definition ko ng ng decimal number, if you are given, for example, our example kanina 41.2, ang mga numbers on the left side of the decimal point is called the whole numbers, while the numbers on the right side of the decimal point is the fractional numbers or the fractional part. That means na kung meron ka ditong whole number, since this is already a mixed fraction, yan yung magiging whole number part niya. And ang kailangan na lang nating i-change or i-convert is yung fractional part so that it will be rewritten as this part. So, ang kailangan na lang nating i-divide is the numerator by its denominator. So that's 5 divided by 8. And 5 divided by 8, following what we're doing kanina, that is 0. But you can extend that by adding decimal point and another 0. So 50 divided by 8, that's 6. 6 times 8, that's 48. Subtracting 2, and you can continue that until you come up with, again, a remainder na 0. So, ang equivalent ng ating fractional part is the decimal number. And don't forget na sabi ko kanina, if this is the whole number of the mixed number, that will also become the whole number of our decimal number. Okay? So, whole to whole, fractional part to decimal part. Now, ang kailangan nyo na lang i-consider is, what if magtutuloy-tuloy siya and you are not going or you will not be able to come up with the remainder 0 pero continuous pa rin yung pagkakakuha natin ng answer. Then you can stop at least 3 decimal places na lang. What I mean is, kahit mag-continue na kayo mag-divide, patuloy pa rin kayong makakakuha ng value dito. For example, meron na naman kayong 1 and then 3 and hindi pa rin natatapos yung ating answer to 0. That's the time that you can stop by rounding off your decimal number into 3 decimal places. So, pwede na kayong mag-stop dito. Okay? So, what if naman 67 over 100? If this is the case, of course, you can still do what I was doing kanina, which is to divide our numerator by its denominator. So, 67 divided by 100. But again, you cannot do that, so you can extend that by adding a decimal point and adding again zeros. So 670 divided by 100, that's 6, and that would give you 600. If you subtract, you will get 70. And that would again, if you continue, that would give you 0.67. Therefore, the equivalent number or the equivalent decimal number for 67 over 100 is 0.67. Okay? So here's another example for you to see that if you divide or if you would like to convert a fraction to a decimal number, you just need to divide its numerator by its denominator. So ganun lamang. So 14 divided by 10, that would give you 1. And 1 times 10, that's 10. So if you subtract, that would give you 4. So nag-continue lang kayo to add zeros until you come up with a remainder na 0. That's why we have our equivalent decimal, which is 1.4. Okay? So just to remind you or just to recap what I said kanina, for us to convert fractions to decimals, ang kailangan nyo lang gawin is to divide your numerator by its denominator. What about if you are going to convert decimal numbers to fractions? Meaning, ang given are decimal numbers and what you're just going to do is to change them or convert them into fractions. So, ang gagawin nyo lang is to try to remember our place value. Or okay lang rin naman na hindi. Since there are, sabi ko nga, there are different ways on how we can solve mathematical problems. And with those different or many ways, you can still or you can use one such that or just basta ba siguraduhin nyo that you will come up with the right answer. So what if you're given, for example, 34.567? So that is our decimal number and we are going to change that into fraction. Just to remind you or just to recall, ang sabi natin, this is the whole number part. That means if you will convert that to a to a fraction, meron tayong whole number. Ibig sabihin, it is a mixed fraction or a mixed number. Now, ang kailangan na lang nating i-change into fraction is the 0.567. Now, ang kailangan nyo lang gawin if you are given such case is bilangin ninyo kung ilang decimal places ang meron. If you will count that, you will have 1, 2, and 3. That will be the number of zeros you will have on your denominator. So that's 0. And just put 1 and then you copy this as a whole to be your numerator. And that would be the equivalent of that would be the equivalent fraction of this decimal number. But try to remember, Uping, that you should make sure that your fractions are rewritten into or they are simplified if it is possible. Always simplify your fractions if possible. Another example is 0.03. So since 0 ang ating whole number, ibig sabihin ganyan lamang siya, wala siyang whole number. So let's consider yung sinabi ko kanina. What you're going to do first is to count the number of place values. That would be 1 and 2. Therefore, meron tayong dalawang zeros. That would be 1, just add 1. And then, kopyain nyo lang dito to be your numerator. Since wala naman tayong number na 0, 3, we can just mabalintilatik katin ni 0 and that would leave you 3 over 100. So if you would like to double check, you can use your calculators to double check and you will still get an equivalent fraction of 0.03 to be 3 over 100. Okay? Another example, 0.725. Your 0.725 is, or if you would like to change that into fraction, you will need first to count. Since wala tayong whole number dito, wala rin tayong number sa tabi, meaning hindi siya mixed number. So you count this, there are 1, 2, and 3. Therefore, meron tayong tatlo ditong zeros. Just add 1 and then copy all of the numbers to be your numerator. Pero, ang ating 725 over 1,000 is reducible. That means you need to reduce that to its simplest form. And if you do that, you can use your calculator. You will be able to get 29 over 40. So using your calculators, you can compute or no, not compute. You can double check whether the fraction is the right answer or the equivalent fraction of your decimal number. So another one is 65.033. Again, since meron tayong whole number dito, that means that our fraction has a whole number na 65 and meron lamang tayong fraction na ganyan. Ang i-convert na lang natin is our 0.33. So since meron siyang tatlong decimal places, that would be tatlong zeros, you can just add 1 and then just copy all of the numbers to be your numerators. And simplify if possible. Okay? Another is 0.14. Since meron lamang siyang dalawang places, that would mean na meron siyang dalawang zeros, write 100 and copy 14. But 14 over 100, that's the reducible. So that's 7 over 50. Okay? So, another example, pag 12 naman, that means that you will have a whole number, meaning mixed fraction siya. So that's 5. And since iisa lang yung place value niya dito, you will just write 1, 0. But 5 over 10 is 1/2. Therefore, your final answer is 12 and 1/2. So that is how we convert fractions to decimals and how we convert decimals to fractions. Another one, or the next topic would be the different operations regarding decimals and fractions. There are cases kasi na what if lang you are going or you are asked to add 10.4 and you are going to add that to 1 over 15. This kind of equation or problem will eventually surprise you or intimidate you. Such cases kasi minsan that it will prompt you not to answer the question na. Numarigatan kayo, han kayo itong answeranin. So that's the reason why I am going to discuss to you how are you going to do or deal with such situation. Ang una ninyong gagawin is, or there are two possible ways you can do that. The first or the one of the two ways is to write them into fraction form. Or yung isa naman is to write them on decimal form. What I'm trying to say is, if you are going to add a decimal number and a fraction number, pwede mo silang i-change into dalawang fraction para makapag-add ka or pwede mo silang i-change into dalawang decimal para makapag-add ka. Now, on your activity of Bing, I will tell you the instruction later regarding that for you to know kung ano ang inyong gagawin on your activity after this discussion. So, if you are going to, in this scenario, ang gagamitin lang natin is decimal form. Pero gusto kong ipakita pa rin kung ano yung pagkakasulat ng ating problem when it is written into fraction. Ibig sabihin, since ang 3/5 natin ay fraction na, ang ating i-rewrite na lang is yung 7.28. So how can you rewrite 7.28 into fraction? You can rewrite that using our definition kanina, which is to copy that whole number and then to count or to copy that as your numerator and to count the number of decimal places since dalawa lamang. That would be your zeros and that's 1. But 28/100 is reducible. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, or what I'm going to just need you to do ay yung decimal form of Bing. Okay? Laglagipin, on your activities, what you're just going to do is the decimal form. You don't have to do the fraction. Ang susulatan nyo na lang is the decimal form. But in our discussion, I would just like to show you the fractional form. Just for you to know kung ano yung magiging, kung paano yung pagkakasulat ng ating given if it is a fraction form. Pero kasi mas mahirap mag-add or mas mahirap mag-add, subtract, or divide or multiply ng fraction rather than decimal numbers. So let's just stay with our decimal form. That means we need to change this to be decimal. And you can do that by dividing 3 by 5. 3 divided by 5, if you will do what I was trying to do kanina, you can extend that by adding or putting the decimal point and adding zeros. So 30 divided by 5, that's 6. 6 times 5, that's 30. And you will have a remainder 0. That means ang ating 3/5 ay equivalent sa 0.6. So if you would rewrite all of this into decimal form, that would be 7.28 plus 0.6. Pero hindi lamang yun nagtatapos doon. Of course, since it deals with operations, you need to find the answer. So you just simply add 7.28 plus 0.6. And I already taught you how to add decimal numbers. And you can do that by just aligning the decimal points. Dapat agkakabatog da. And then you can just add as like you are adding normal numbers. So for example, 8 plus 0, that's 8. 7 plus 6, 2 plus 6, that's 8. 7 plus 0, that's 7. Therefore, our final answer here is just 7.88. Okay? Another example, what if naman you are trying or you are going to find the product of 2/3 and 2.32. Of course, sabi ko kanina, you can change them both into fractions para makapag-multiply ka, pero you can also change them both into decimal numbers. And as I was trying to say kanina, in our class or in our activity, you're just going to write or answer the decimal form. So, ibig sabihin, your 2/3 should be rewritten as decimals. And you can do that by dividing 2 by 3. So, 2 divided by 3 cannot be, that's 0. So, you can extend that by adding or putting the decimal point and adding zeros. So, 20 divided by 3, that's 6. That's 18. That's 2. You can add again. That would give you again 6. And that's 18 again. If you will continue hanggang sa gusto ninyo, hindi na kayo makakakuha ng kahit na anong numbers aside from 6. Kasi if you will add again 0 here, Tapos ibababa mo na naman, that would again give you 20. 20 divided by 3, that's 6. That's again 18. You will again get 2. And then pag mag-a-add na naman kayo, that would again 20. And paulit-ulit lang na 6 ang makukuha ninyo until eternity. Kung kahit nakapag-add na kayo ng napakaraming zeros, you will still get 6. So therefore, ang sabi ko kanina, kapag masyado ng marami at hindi na kayo makakapag-come up ng remainder na zero, you can just simply stop and you can just give me at least 3 or 2 decimal places of your answer. So dito sa point na to, I chose 2 decimal places. So yung 0.666 natin is just rewritten as 0.67. So let's multiply 0.67 by 2.32, and by multiplying fractions, ang ginagawa niyo lang is to simply multiply them like you're multiplying numerical values, or you're just like you're multiplying natural numbers. That's just 7 times 2, that's 14. So parang ganun lang, 7 times 2, that's 14, 7 times 3, 21 plus 2, that's 22. 7 times 2, 14, plus 2, that's 16. So again, multiplication, try to remember or try to recall your multiplication. Now, you can just add them until you get 1.5544. Therefore, if you multiply 2/3 and 2.32, you will get 1.5544. Or you can just change that into 2 decimal place, or pwede naman kayong round off until 2 decimal places so that you would be, or you will give me 1.55. Okay? Okay. So now, let's go to the last topic, or let's see. To the last topic of our chapter 6, which is on the comparison of decimals. So what if naman, ang given scenario is you are asked between 4/5 and for example 21.3. Which one is greater? So you are asked to decide kung ito ba ay greater than, less than, or equal. So that is our main goal today, which is to discuss what are you going to do if this is the kind of scenario you are in. And ang una ninyong gagawin is just to make sure na lahat ng given ay rewritten or converted into decimal. So lahat ng fraction gawin ninyong decimal. Lahat ng decimals na given as it is lang, decimals pa rin. Kasi ang kailangan ninyong makita ay decimals. Mas madaling mag-compare ng decimals kaysa mag-compare ng fractions. Okay? So first rule, dapat you make sure that all of the given data are written in decimal numbers. You cannot proceed otherwise. Next step is to first compare the decimals with respect to their whole numbers. So pag meron kayong decimals, for example, na 4.2 and meron kayong decimals na 3.1, ang una ninyong i-consider is the decimal or the whole number. Ang ating whole number dito ay 4, ang ating whole number dito ay 3. Of course, alam natin na mas malaki or mas marami si 4. That is why our equation or our operator should be like this. Kasi 4.2 is greater than 3.1. Kasi alam natin mas marami or mas malaki si 4 as compared to 3. Pero kapag magkapareho sila ng whole number, then that's the time that you can go on to the decimal values para i-consider mo na, or you can now start considering them. Pero if you are given such case, ang gagawin niyo dapat una is to make sure of being that all of the or lahat ng decimal numbers nyo or decimal places nyo ay magkapareho. For example, you have 6.21 and you have 6.310. Now, as you can see, parehas sila ng whole numbers. Ang kanilang whole number ay 6. That is the reason why you are going to go on or you are going to move doon sa decimal places niya, which is 21 and 310. But first, before kayo mag-compare, what you're just going to do first is to see kung dapat ay or to make sure na magkaparehas sila ng number of decimal places. This one, on the left side, meron lamang siyang 2 decimal places. Ito, 3. You follow the greater decimal places. So, since merong 3 itong isa, add a value here para maging 3 rin. And you can add 0. Kasi sabi natin, you can continuously add zeros sa ating decimal number kahit ilan pa yan. Now, we can now compare these decimal numbers. You can just compare here. This is 210. This is 310. Anong mas marami? Of course, 310 ang mas marami. Okay? So let's try to look at this example. Since our whole number here is 0, while this is 2, of course, alam natin mas marami si 2 kaysa kay 0. That's why ang operator natin ay ganyan. How about this? As you can see, parehas silang dalawang walang whole number. And so that's the reason why you need to move dito sa kanilang decimal numbers. But first, make sure na agpadada itibilang. Since there are 3 here and there are only 2 here, add 0 para maging 3. Now, you can now compare them since parehas sila. Since we know or compare 233 by 230, which one is greater? Isunukwat sang wen DJ, ngiwat DJ operator tayo. So the greater value will be the place where our operator will open its mouth. That's why greater than. Another is 0.14 and 0.140. Again, since parehas silang walang whole number or parehas sila ng whole number which is 0, consider your decimal numbers. You can add 0 here so that you can compare them para parehas sila ng number. And since you can see na meron silang same value, that's the reason why it is equals. Okay? Another example or another activity is try to write or determine whether it is greater than, it is less than, or it is equal. This is the example na sinasabi ko kanina where what if ang isang given is a decimal na or a fractional number? Of course, that is the time kung saan kailangan ninyong i-change yung fraction na yon into decimal. So, our 5 and 19 over 50, ibig sabihin yan, meron siyang whole number. And ang i-change na lang natin is this. That's the reason why 19 over 50, as you can continue, you will be able to get 0.38. So our 4 and 19 over 50 is equivalent to 5.38. And let's try to compare them to 5.37. Since parehas sila ng whole number, erase. Now, this is 38, this is 37. We know that 38 is greater than 37. As ganun lamang. Okay? How about this scenario? Meron kang parehas na whole number, but hindi sila magkaparehas ng value ng kanilang decimal places. That's the reason why you need to add a 0 here. Doon ka lamang pwedeng mag-continue on comparing them. So this one is 501, while this is 550. So which one or what operation will we use? Of course, mas malaki ang ating 550. That's why it is ganyan. Okay? How about 0.501 and 0.50? Again, change or you can add a 0 and you can compare 501 by 500. Yung mas malaki, of course, is 501. That's the reason why the opening of our operator faces are 501. Okay? That goes on to the same or scenario kasi 8 ito, 1, 0 lamang ito. And we know that 8 is literally greater than 0. While 1/4 and 1.5, this is, you can add 0 para parehas silang dalawa. And we know that 5 or 50 rather is greater than 44. So doon mag-open ang ating operator. Now, so let's try to recall our discussion. First is the conversion of fraction to decimal and vice versa. Next is the operations regarding fractions and decimals. And the last one is comparison of decimals. Let's talk about your activities. For some of the classes kasi, I wasn't able to meet them last week because some are meron tayong mga interruptions just like webinars, some na kailangan naming i-meet. So that's the reason why we were not able to meet you, and of course your academic breaks. And since this week will be the start of your midterm examination, that's the reason why I am trying to make this lecture discussion. Okay? Now, for some of this class or the classes, dalawa lang naman yung hindi ko na-meet. This is our exercise 6A. So, sa inyong quiz, may papakita doon are this. Okay? These are the things that you are going to answer on your quizzes. And also on your activities kasi kailangan yung isend ang kanilang solution as always. Now, don't worry kasi sa inyong activity, ang gagawin niyo lamang doon is to tell whether the equation or the equivalence equation or relation is true or false. So, ibig sabihin, I will provide here a decimal number like 0.75. Tell whether they are equal or not. So, are they equal, true, or false? Ganun lamang. Okay? You don't need to write. I mean, hindi kayo ang mag-i-input ng answers ninyo. So, para hindi masyadong mahirapan, hindi kayo mahirapan on your part. Next one is our exercise 6B. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina that you can rewrite this both in fraction form or in decimal form. But I would like to clarify this, Ubing. Ang aansaran nyo lamang is the decimal form and this. Of course, you need to perform the operation. Don't answer the fraction form. No need to answer the fraction form of being. Ang kailangan ko lang na answer ninyo is, or ang kailangan ko lang makita on your solution is the decimal form and the answer form. And wag kayong mag-alala doon sa inyong activity or din sa quiz ninyo kasi ang quiz nyo lang naman is, again, multiple choice. Pipiliin nyo. Hindi kayo mag-i-input. And for the last activity, ganun lang rin. You will just choose kung ito ba ay greater than or less than or equal. Just choose. Ganun lang. Okay? Now, on your decimal places of being, just stop or just give me or round it off up to 2 decimal places. So, yun yung aking instruction, okay? Okay. So, if you can use this for you to review and for you to finish our activities kasi I know that some of you are still confused. And since I know, or since again, I need to prepare for your preliminary or your midterm examination. So I'm doing this lecture video. Okay? So that's all and goodbye. I hope you're going to finish all of your activities. If you have seen, na-open ko na lahat ng activities ninyo in your midterms. They are all open this week until Sunday for you to pass all your missing activities. That is your last chance to pass all your missing midterm activities. Kasi I already calculated or I'm already done with your prelim grades. That's why hindi nyo na pwedeng isend yung mga activities nyo doon. What I'm just going to accept and which is open now until this Friday or until Sunday is the activities on midterm period. Okay? So good luck on your examination. So don't forget your prelim or your midterm exam or midterm examination permit. Good luck.